A very warm welcome to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuloko. How's business going? And we do hope that you are paying your taxes as and when due. And talking about paying taxes as and when due, audits, tax audits, investigation are part of the processes of the tax administration system, tools that are employed by revenue, by the tax authorities to ensure that taxpayers comply with tax laws. And today on the program we have as guest Mrs. Fauzat Oguniyi, the Director, Tax Audit Department at the Federal Revenue Service. She will be taking us through what is involved in conducting tax audit on taxpayers. Madam, you are welcome to Tax Matters.
Thank you, Tax Matters.
Yeah. There are some concepts that we hear related, so to say, tax audit, desk examination, investigation. Maybe we should begin by defining those three and any other ones that you know about, and then trying to trace out the differences between them.
Thank you, Tax Matters. I will start by trying to do a little brief in distinguishing between a desk examination, tax audit, and investigation. Okay. Desk examination, as the name implies, is just an act of reviewing the tax returns that a taxpayer files in the tax office. And usually, sometimes when we ask those questions about the returns that he files, we normally ask for clarifications from the taxpayers just to support the arithmetical accuracy. And if there are few things that we can quickly point out that is infringing with the tax laws, so it is done on the desk. But tax audit, on the other side, is an in-depth examination which involves the tax auditors going to the taxpayer's premises and then looking at the underlying records just to confirm that he has complied with the tax laws and he has also paid the proper taxes. Usually it takes about a week or so to do that in the premises of the taxpayer. And for investigation, it's a little deeper and is usually coming up through a trigger. Most investigation cases end in litigation, and it involves sometimes search and seizure in the premises of the taxpayer. In a nutshell, that's a brief difference between the three.
Okay. Yeah. We asked a colleague of yours, and we'll ask you this question. Is there any reason for the taxpayer to fear the tax audit process?
There is no reason at all. If you have complied with the law, and if you need also some clarification, there is no reason to fear. Tax audit in itself is just to reinforce compliance with the tax law. And that way, we'll be able to minimize cases of evasion, cases of avoidance. There's no reason to fear at all.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Now, you have defined tax audit. What do you do? What are the steps you take in conducting tax audit?
Yeah, thank you for that very good question. To conduct a tax audit, there will be a trigger. You would have done some risk analysis about the returns of the company, whether the company files return or not. You normally get information. I mean, information is all over the place. If there are information that posts a company as a risk factor in the industry he operates, we will station such a case or mark such a case for tax audit. And normally we notify the taxpayer on the day we'll be coming. Okay. When we notify him, we also give him the list of the things that we require for that audit to hold. We go to the premises. It takes about 5 days depending on the volume of activities. Then after that, we do some reconciliation meetings with the taxpayers. From the reconciliation, we'll be able to agree on issues that border on the law and border on compliance. Thereafter, it might end up, we assess him. It may not end up in assessment. It may just be that we have also engaged the taxpayer in a way that his compliance level is reinforced.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What are the common documents, the kind of documents that a taxpayer that is going to undergo audit, what are the documents that he has to get ready?
First of all, he has to make his returns, the normal returns that he should file with the tax office, his financial statements, his capital allowance, his computations, and all the underlying records that we need to do the audit, his general ledger, his final records, and also the transaction records in terms of what makes up those things that he records in his final account. And apart from that, his bank transactions, we also sometimes want to know people behind the company and his customers, his suppliers, his relationship with some stakeholders to the companies, the shareholders, the contributors to the companies. Those are the things normally that we, but usually we don't have an exhausted list of the things that we require. As we go on the exercise, if we require some other information, we ask the company. But usually we implore companies to always keep their records so that when we get to the field, we have a hitch-free audit process.
It's a new dawn in Nigeria, and the mantra is change. The wind of change is blowing all over Nigeria and beckons to you. One sure way to respond is to perform your civic duty, pay your tax. With taxes, government generates revenue to fulfill its electoral promises, ensure regular power supply, provide good security, standard education, medical care, true total change. Individuals and corporations enjoy specific benefits, rights and privileges for paying taxes and avoid the consequences and penalties of not paying. Oil revenue is no longer sufficient to bring desired change, but your tax can. It pays to pay your tax. A message from the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Let's go back to the issue of records. Yes, we know that a good business owner should keep records, not even for tax purposes alone, but we're talking about taxation. When you come to conduct tax audit, how far are you allowed to go? How many years am I expected to keep some of my records? Flight ticket stubs, bank statements, check stubs, all those things that can constitute luggage in my office. How far does the law allow you to go?
For purposes of the tax audit, the law allows as long as 6 years. Except,
6?
Yes. Except if there are issues around fraud or willful, commitments, against the tax.
Outright tax evasion.
Yeah, exactly. Outright tax evasion, then we can trigger as many years as the trigger goes. But for tax audit purposes, 6 years is
okay.
Except there are issues that surrounds fraud or willful, commitments against the tax law or against the tax audit.
So the taxpayer is advised to keep his records for at least 6 years.
For at least 6 years.
Receipts, invoices, all those records
If
for at least 6 years.
Tax misdemeanor, but if there is, we could open up as many years as the trigger lingers.
How regularly do you go to taxpayers? What I mean is, how many times within 3 years or 4 years can I expect that you will come to me to conduct audits?
Yeah, usually a period of 3 years cycle is a regular one, depends on the volume of that taxpayer. If it's a large taxpayer, we usually recommend that within a period of 3 years, we should have visited that company. And if it is all these micro and small company, maybe every year.
Every year?
Yeah. Ordinarily.
What are the rights of the taxpayer during that audit process?
Oh.
Are you just going to carry this, carry that?
There is enormous rights for the taxpayers. The taxpayer has this right of confidentiality of the financial and business information that the tax auditor review. He also has the right of identification of the auditor that is coming to his premises, the tax auditor. He also has this right to be notified of the outcome of the audit. You don't just do the audit and leave him without giving him the outcome of his compliance level. And then he also has this right to involve a professional consultant if he so wishes. You cannot block him from that. He has a right to be given opportunity to explain his misdemeanor or whatever he has done. He has a right to give reasons for his irregularity, and whether it is ignorant or whatever, part of it in the tax audit process is to educate the taxpayer.
I like that.
And then the other right is his right to the audit queries. He has a right to it. He has a right to appeal to any assessment you give him. And he also has the right in all the stages of the court of law to go on and on until the matter is determined and closed.
This audit report is meant to, at least at the end of the day, collect what is owed and all that. But do you have instances where you now, you spoke about the debt enforcement unit.
Yes.
Do you also refer cases to investigation?
Yeah, if he meets a brick wall with any case, like he's not giving information, he's not allowing access to the records, and just, almost getting frustrated, you engage him, he's just recalcitrant, he's just adamant. You catalog all the stages of the frustrations and then forward through the management to investigation to take it up. But like I said, he's always having that right to be able to hear his own side of the story. And even when you go ahead and assess him, he has a right to object to the assessment within the time limit provided by the law.
When you have auditing to a company that you are coming and all that, do you still have instances where the audit team is resisted?
We have such instances, but we also use the power within the law to be able to handle such situation. In situation where we have tried to enter your premises and you have not allowed us, we would continue to, pacify. We engage you, we call your consultant, we call the owners, we write to you. If at the end of the day we hit the wall, we have this other option to escalate.
To where?
We can escalate to the investigation for them to come in. And at that point, we will use all the enforcement team to be able to penetrate.
Okay.
Yeah. But usually that's a last resort thing. We try to engage through the consultant, through the owners of the company, through some meetings, through some phone call. But it's at the end of the day when we hit a brick wall that we then use all the processes within our power and escalate and refer to the other level.
Okay.
Yes.
What are the kind of things that you look for typically when you go to a company? Is it because you have seen that this person has defaulted in certain areas, or when you go on that normal maybe 3-year cycle, what are the typical things that you look for?
First of all, you want to confirm that the returns that this taxpayer has submitted to the revenue authorities, his activities also reflect their returns. And if we also have external data on such a taxpayer, we also want to prove to him that this is an external data about your activities. And so we need also evidences to validate those things that we garner.
What do you mean by external data?
Sometimes, companies do not operate in isolation. They operate in line with whoever is their customer, whoever is their stakeholder. So these people that they transact business with, in quotes, we usually also get information from them. And those information, they are subject of verification for us to also, confirm that these are genuine transactions. To be able to also confirm that he has also reported those things in the course of his presentation of his tax obligations.
Okay. We want you to let our viewers know the kind of avenues that you have in finding out information about them. What are you talking about? What are your linkages with sister organizations, CAC, the banks, the customs? Where do you get all those external data that you keep talking about?
Yeah, annually we usually have a process that connects us with CAC, and CAC data is always there for us to work on. The Nigerian custom, we are on their platform, so any moment we need, and in fact by default we get the information. For the banking data, every month banks send transactions of customers to us, And if you have any specific reason to dig more, we usually have a cooperation of the bank to give us information, especially issues that border on fraud or misdemeanor on tax issues. We engage through the proper processes, and also the multinationals, we ask them to give us the transaction of their customers within the, a certain threshold of amounts of transaction, and that we have been getting. With BPPE, we've also been getting information. With ICPC, if we need information, that's even on the investigation side. We have their door open for us anytime, and we're not going to limit ourselves to just these few ones I have mentioned. As a government agency, we continue to collaborate with all parties that will ease off this job for us to deliver our mandate.
How long it will take for you to clear my container?
I dey do am, Oga. Then Sable will go bring our team.
Our team? Which team?
Custom don't change, Oga. And FRS Sable.
And what you concern FRS with my business? I will talk to Gaba myself. You are fired.
Oga.
Oga Gaba, which one be this our team again?
The taxpayer identification number now the only way where you fit take do business with Nigerian Customs Service now. You fit process your own free tin, sharp for any FRIS office.
Soji.
You don't sack me, no.
Get our tin. Now.
This message now from Federal Inland Revenue Service and Nigeria Customs Service.
Okay. Now, when you finish the audit process in the office of the taxpayer, how long does it take to send in your comments to him?
Usually when we close out from the field visit, because the audit doesn't get closed from the field, within a week, his preliminary report should get to him.
Okay.
And then reconciliation begins. And then the reconciliation, usually our process should last within 12 weeks. The whole audit process should last within 12 weeks.
That is, when you submit your preliminary report to him, how long does he have to reply you?
Usually we specify in the letter,
okay.
We give him about maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But before that reconciliation, we usually implore them to bring in all their submissions so that the reconciliation will be a very, very smooth one. Ordinarily, when we have reviewed the document before the reconciliation, it's usually a hitch-free meeting. What we then do there is to just look at the review comments on those submissions. And that makes the reconciliation very, very short and snappy.
If you don't reach an agreement, if the taxpayer objects to your submissions, to your findings, he replies you are not satisfied, you stand your ground, what's the next step? What does he do?
He has a lot of options. He could go to the tribunal. Once we have assessed him, he has that option within 30 days of getting our notice.
Okay, 30 days.
Yes, 30 days within getting our notice. He has that option to go to the tribunal to say, he can write and even object to whatever assessment we give him within 30 days of that assessment. Otherwise, if he doesn't respond within those 30 days, we take it as an agreed assessment, and so we enforce collection on those assessments.
Have you experienced instances where the taxpayer just ignores you? Let me put it this way. You sent in your preliminary objections, he has responded, and there's a stalemate. You have said that he can go to the tribunal. Do you also go to the tribunal, the FRS? Do you go to the tribunal, or do you now go and enforce payment? Which one do you do?
It's both ways. If we have written to him and to call for the payment of that assessment, and we're not getting any response, there are a lot of powers in the law that we can, fall back upon. We can, access his bank account and use our power of substitution to freeze his account in order for us to enforce collection of that assessment. We can as well, notify him that, look, you need to pay this money. That should even be the first thing. After that, then we can also use all those other powers to ensure that collection is made. Otherwise, we refer the case to our debt enforcement group to take the next line of action.
You said at the beginning that if you're going to conduct tax audit, you will write the taxpayer.
Yes.
So, are you saying that when people just come into my office and tell me they are tax auditors, that I should not mind them? what do you do now? From your different tax offices all over the country, can somebody from any of those tax offices just come into my premises and say that they have come for tax audit?
No, there will be a form of identification in the first instance. The ID card is one thing, and then there will be a notification before we come to your premises, and we would have listed to you some of the things that, and the taxpayer also has a right where you feel, the identity of the team is in doubt. You can call. My line is open. The management line is also open. The communications line are very open for you to confirm the identity of. Otherwise, the tax audit offices all over the country, they usually would have written a letter for pre-audit or even for the audit notification. And on getting to the taxpayers' premises, there are forms of identification. Usually they move in a team of at least 2 or 3 officers wearing their identity card.
Good.
And we have our phone lines and email where the taxpayer can also call if there's any doubt about the identity of the team.
There was a time too that revenue started talking about risk analysis, that rather than going to every company every 3 years or whatever, you use some risk analysis to determine those who you should visit. You want to talk about this risk-based analysis?
I just started by telling you that auditing itself doesn't just get triggered.
Okay.
Except if there is any reason to open up a particular industry, maybe government is feeling or management feels that this industry needs to be x-rayed. Otherwise, every tax audit is risk triggered. Whether you file the returns or not, if there are risk analyses within or without, there are points at such an organization. And that risk analysis involves maybe checking the ratio of your turnover to your expenses, your gross profit to your expenses, your costs, or maybe your stock out there is protruding a very huge amount, or maybe your loan is indicative of all those issues could come up as triggers for risk indicators and could also call a pointer for us to proceed on an audit.
Is it quite possible that a company doesn't ever get audited? Is it possible? A particular company?
It is not possible. For any reason at all, we will one way or the other want to even confirm the compliance status of a company. So the way we are going today is to ensure that all companies have an exposure. It is then, after all these x-rays, that we'll be able to also have a confidence level whether they have actually been complying with the tax laws. And in complement to the self-assessment regime in anywhere in the world today, tax audit is a very paramount thing for us to be able to confirm, to be able to reinforce compliance.
We're wondering about companies that don't have, what do you call it in taxation, permanent establishment. There are a lot of people who, from Lagos, they fly to Port Harcourt, get a contract, execute the contract, Abuja in the morning, back to Ibadan in the evening. How do you deal with such companies?
Yeah, thank you. This is not an unusual thing anywhere in the world, but like I started in the course of this interview, we leverage so much on external data. These portfolio companies, they do not operate in isolation. They have the customers that they serve. And so, because the customer is also a feasible person, the information that we garner from the external data, from the bank, from the customs, from even the multinationals, has been helping us to be able to nip some of these portfolio companies. And that way, we've been able to also navigate through, making them to comply. We're not there yet, but we keep trucking so that we'll be able to say at the end of the day that you can only hide, but you cannot run.
There is no hiding place.
Exactly.
Because if you are not visible, your customer is visible.
Exactly.
So through your friend, I know you.
Exactly.
You've had it. There's no hiding place. You need to be a ghost to escape the net because you don't work in isolation. You transfer business through the banks. You bring in things through customs. So our advice to you, keep your nose dry, keep records, file your returns as and when due, pay your taxes on due dates, and there will be no problem. Madam, we thank you most sincerely for coming out to the program.
Thank you so much, Tax
We
Merchants.
appreciate the good work that you are doing and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.